When my daughter told me not to come to her birthday, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the whole thing she was celebrating was mine. It was a Thursday morning in late March. I was sitting on my porch in Austin, Texas, reading the paper, when Clara's name flashed on my phone. She never called this early unless it was important. I answered with that automatic warmth only a parent keeps long after it's been deserved. "Dad," she said, voice clipped, "Ethan and I talked about it, and we think it's best if you don't come to the party this year. We're keeping it small. Just close friends, you know, our age group." I remember the pause that followed. The silence stretched so long I could hear a mockingbird outside the window. Then she added the line that cut through everything I believed about us. "Ethan doesn't want it to feel old-fashioned." There it was. Old-fashioned. That's how my own daughter saw me now. The man who paid her college tuition, her first car, and, though she didn't know it, her mortgage. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I told her it was fine, that I understood. She sighed in relief, thanked me, and hung up before I could even finish saying goodbye. For a long while, I just sat there, staring at the oak tree in my yard. My wife, Anna, planted that tree the same year Clara was born. 28 years later, it was still standing tall, while our daughter, the one we built everything for, now saw us as decor that didn't match her new life. That afternoon, I drove to her house anyway, not to intrude, but to drop off a gift I'd already wrapped. A small box, silver paper, ribbon folded just right. No card on Ethan's truck was in the driveway, polished as always. The house looked different, louder somehow. Through the open kitchen window, I heard laughter, the kind that stings when you're on the outside of it. I set the box by the door and turned to leave. That's when I saw it. A catering invoice pinned to a corkboard inside, visible through the glass. I couldn't read the details clearly, so I took out my reading glasses. There it was, printed near the bottom. Account billed to M. Hale Trust. My name. My account. I stood frozen. The cake, the decorations, the entire event I wasn't welcome at. All of it paid for with my money. Driving home, I kept thinking about my late wife. She'd created that trust for Clara's future, she'd said, not for Ethan's ego. When I got home, I placed the wrapped gift on the kitchen counter beside my checkbook. I looked at both. One symbol of love, one of control, and realized something had just shifted. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, they were about to find out what that really meant. That night, the house felt larger than it had in years. Every sound echoed. The hum of the fridge, the slow tick of the wall clock, the faint Texas wind tapping against the glass. When you've lived long enough, silence stops being peaceful. It becomes a mirror. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of decaf and the catering invoice I'd printed from my email. It was right there. Horizon Events, 38,200 Tiers. Billed to M. Hale Trust. My name was listed under primary contact. I stared at it for a long time, wondering how many times they'd used that phrase, our party, our house, our life, without realizing who had built the floor beneath them. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow. After Anna passed 3 years ago, Clara and I promised to stay close. She'd said, "Dad, you'll always have us." I believed her. Every month, I transferred $200 from the trust to cover the mortgage on their home in Barton Hills. I told her it was from Mom's savings. It wasn't. It was from mine. I'd done it to keep her stable after losing her mother. But now, sitting in the glow of a weak kitchen light, I realized that generosity had turned into dependency, and dependency had turned into entitlement. Friday morning, I drove to Lady Bird Lake like I always did when I needed to think. The air smelled faintly of cedar and rain. A group of joggers passed me on the trail, and for a moment I envied their pace, their purpose. I used to have that once when Anna and I ran our small accounting firm downtown. Numbers made sense back then. People didn't. I opened my old leather folder and began sorting through what was left of my life. A photo of Clara in her graduation gown, a faded check stub from Anna's first commission, a note she wrote in looping cursive, "For Clara's future. Keep it safe." I could still hear Anna's voice. "If anything ever happens to me, make sure Clara's secure." Secure. Not spoiled, not detached, secure. By Sunday, the phone calls started. Ethan texted first on a short, cold message. Hey, Martin, can you confirm that last transfer cleared? We need to finalize catering before Monday. No. Please, no. Thank you. Just assumption. I typed, then deleted a dozen responses before finally sending, yes, it cleared. Happy birthday to Clara? He didn't reply. The next day, I went through Anna's old files. She'd been meticulous, color-coded folders, neatly labeled envelopes. In one of them, I found the original trust document. Dated 2017, her signature still clear in blue ink. Below her name was a clause I hadn't noticed before. Trustee retains full authority to freeze or redirect funds in the event of misuse or misrepresentation of purpose. I read it twice. Misrepresentation of purpose. That phrase rolled around in my mind like a coin spinning on a counter. Was paying for a party that excluded me misrepresentation? Maybe not legally, but morally? It was a betrayal. That evening I set 2 plates at the dinner table out of habit. Old habits don't fade, they ache. I poured a glass of red wine and placed it across from me where Anna used to sit. I think I failed her, I said quietly. We raised her to be confident, not cruel. The house didn't answer. It never does. Around 9, the phone buzzed again. This time, Clara. Her voice was chipper, almost rehearsed. Dad, I just wanted to let you know everything's set for Saturday. We're so excited. I waited a moment, then asked, and you're sure you don't want me there? A pause. It's not that we don't want you there, Dad. It's just, Ethan thinks it might be better to keep things more, fresh. Fresh, I repeated. Right. When the call ended, I stared at the trust document again. My late wife's handwriting beside that legal clause felt like a whisper from the past. By midnight, I'd made up my mind. If they wanted to build their lives on the foundation I laid, they'd learn what happens when the ground shifts. Monday morning arrived with a pale sky and the smell of rain on concrete. I woke before sunrise, not out of rest, but out of habit, the same way I used to before client audits. The routine comforted me. Coffee first, tie the curtains, open the ledger. Only this time I wasn't balancing accounts. I was balancing trust, mine in them, theirs in me. I called Daniel Price at 9 sharp. Daniel had been Anna's lawyer for 20 years. A quiet man with steel-gray hair and a memory for numbers sharper than most calculators. Martin, he said, his voice warm but wary, haven't heard from you since the last tax season. Everything all right? Define all right, I replied. Do you still have access to Anna's trust records? He hesitated just long enough to tell me he already knew something was wrong. I do. What's going on? So I told him. The party, the exclusion, the invoices with my name on them. I could hear him exhale softly through the line. You're saying they billed the trust without your authorization? They didn't even invite me to the thing, I said. And I paid for it. We agreed to meet the next morning at a coffee shop near Congress Avenue. Quiet, neutral ground. When I walked in, the bell over the door chimed faintly. Daniel was already there, laptop open, black coffee untouched. He had that same look he used to get when a client's numbers didn't add up. He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were printouts, wire transfers, statements, and digital receipts, all showing withdrawals from the Hale Family Trust into an account under Ethan Price Consulting, LLC. They used a business front? I asked. Seems like it. Look here, he said, tapping a highlighted section. Each withdrawal was logged as home maintenance, but the routing leads to catering, decor, and travel expenses. This isn't oversight, Martin. It's deliberate. Something in me hardened then. I wasn't a man built for confrontation, but numbers don't lie. And I'd spent a lifetime reading truth in decimals. I asked him to pull the full chain of payments for the past 3 months. I want to know every dollar that left that account. Every single one, Daniel nodded. What are you planning to do? I'm going to let them throw their party, I said quietly. But this time, the bill will have my name printed large enough for everyone to see. He smiled faintly, though his eyes showed concern. Just be careful, Martin. Revenge is easier to start than to stop. Who said anything about revenge? I said, stirring my coffee. This is an audit. That evening, back home, I spread all the documents across the kitchen table like pieces of a puzzle. The catering invoice, The florist order, $4,800 for seasonal arrangements. The venue rental, $11,600. Every page had my name on it somewhere, buried in fine print. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to the event coordinator. My tone was polite, professional. Please confirm that payment processing reflects M. Hale Trust as final remitter. Within minutes, she replied, "Yes, Mr. Hale, everything cleared perfectly. We'll make sure all documentation shows you as the payer. Thank you again for your generosity." I almost laughed. I forwarded that thread to Daniel and added one line, "Keep this on record." The next morning, I took a drive to Barton Hills, not to confront them, but to watch. Through the windshield, I saw delivery trucks unloading crates of wine and table linens. The sound of laughter spilled from inside the house. Ethan stood at the gate, giving orders like a foreman. When he spotted my car, he waved with the kind of confidence only ignorance can buy. "Hey, Martin, didn't think you'd drop by. Just passing through," I said, smiling. "Looks like quite the celebration," he smirked. "You know us and big plans." "Big plans," I repeated, nodding. Driving away, I could almost feel Anna beside me. She used to say, "Never argue with arrogance, Martin. Just balance the books." By dusk, I had a plan. Let them have their perfect party. The lights, the guests, the illusion of success. Then, in front of everyone, they'd see who truly signed the checks. Justice doesn't always need shouting. Sometimes it just needs good accounting. The next few days, I moved quietly. Not with anger, anger makes noise, but with calculation. That's what years in accounting had taught me. A good audit never starts with confrontation. Only observation. Tuesday morning, I stopped by the flower shop listed on one of the invoices, Austin Blooms. The owner, a kind woman named Teresa, was wrapping tulips for a customer. I asked if the Hale event order had gone through. She smiled. "Oh yes, Mr. Hale, everything's confirmed for Saturday. You have a beautiful daughter. She mentioned you were sponsoring the whole thing." I nodded, thanked her, and left. So Clara wasn't just pretending I didn't exist, she was using me as decoration too. Dad, the benefactor. Convenient enough to fund her show, not enough to share a chair at the table. That afternoon, I stopped by Daniel's office with a simple instruction. "Freeze the trust at midnight Saturday," I said. "After all the invoices clear, not before. Let them enjoy their evening." He raised an eyebrow. "You're sure about this?" "Absolutely. They won't know what's happened until the last guest leaves." He leaned back, studying me. "You're calm about this." "I'm an accountant, Daniel. Numbers don't panic." By Thursday, Austin's skies had turned gold and gray, the kind of spring light that feels like a warning. I spent the morning organizing receipts into one manila folder and writing a short note, just 3 lines long on thick stationery. "Happy birthday, Clara. I hope this year brings you truth, not things." Friday, I drove past the event venue, a Spanish-style estate just outside the city, all glass and sandstone. Trucks rolled in with catering equipment, and I caught a glimpse of Clara in a white dress, radiant and busy. Ethan barked instructions at the staff. I parked across the street for a while, watching. I thought of Anna. She would have wanted to see her daughter happy, but not like this. Not hollow. When I got home, I opened my old filing cabinet. Tucked between tax folders was the original mortgage contract. My name printed first, Clara's below. Ethan's signature scribbled in smaller ink. Joint occupancy, the form read. I remembered the day we signed it, how Ethan had insisted, "We'll refinance later." They never did. That night, I took one more step. I wrote an email to the catering manager, polite and straightforward. "Please deliver final invoice copies to both myself and the host family during the event for acknowledgement of receipt. Thank you, Memsa Hale." No one questioned it. No one ever questions a man who pays his bills on time. Saturday came bright and warm. From my porch, I could almost smell the faint drift of grilled salmon and rosemary from across the hills. The party had started. I imagined the music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, all funded line by line from the trust labeled "For Clara's Future." I didn't go. I didn't need to. I'd already built my presence into the night. Every floral tag, every catering invoice, every credit note bore my name. Around 8 p.m., as the sun fell behind the oaks, Daniel texted. Transfer freeze confirmed. Effective midnight, I replied. Perfect. Let them toast first. Then I poured myself a small glass of scotch, Anna's favorite, and sat by the window. The oak tree outside swayed in the evening wind. I thought about how often I'd paid for things quietly, thinking it was love when it was just permission. At 10:30, my phone buzzed again. Mrs. Delgado, my neighbor and longtime friend, had attended the party. She was Clara's old piano teacher and had been invited out of courtesy. Her message was short but telling. They just announced you funded the whole event. People are clapping. I smiled, a thin, tired smile. That was good. Let them clap. Let them celebrate their illusion, because when the checks bounced on Monday morning, they'd finally understand what it meant to exclude the man who built their floor. Sunday mornings used to mean coffee with Clara. She'd come by after church, tell me about her week, ask about the garden. That stopped the year she married Ethan. He was polite in the beginning, even deferential. But over time, politeness turned into distance and distance into management. He managed her schedule, her friends, even how often she saw me. The morning after the party, I sat with my usual mug of black coffee, waiting. I didn't have to wonder for long. At 9:12 a.m., the first call came. It was Ethan. No greeting, just static and irritation. Hey Martin, quick question. Our bank app's showing pending charges. Something weird with the trust account. Can you check on your end? I played dumb. My end? I said, flipping through the paper. It's Anna's trust, Ethan. It's been quiet for years. He hesitated, caught between arrogance and fear. Well, it's not quiet now. Payments are reversing. The venue, the caterers, everyone's calling me. Sounds like a bookkeeping error, I said. Maybe you should talk to your accountant. The silence on his end was heavy, like someone realizing they'd misplaced the ground under their feet. You're the accountant, he muttered. Then the line went dead. I didn't call back. At noon, Daniel sent confirmation. Trust account frozen. All outgoing transfers halted. Notices delivered to involved vendors. By evening, Clara's number appeared on my phone. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice cracked halfway between anger and confusion. Dad, what happened? Ethan says the payments bounced. The venue called, said they need a new card or they'll file a claim. I took a breath. You used the trust for your birthday, Clara. Without asking, that's misuse. Her tone hardened. We didn't misuse anything. You always said that money was for my future. I did, I said. But your mother meant future as in foundation, not decoration. There's a difference. Ethan said. She started, but stopped. Dad, please, can you just unlock it? We'll fix it later. I looked at the photo on the wall, Anna smiling beside Clara at her graduation. You already did, sweetheart. You fixed it the moment you decided who belonged in your life and who didn't. She hung up without another word. That night, Mrs. Delgado stopped by with a small dish of flan. She'd heard enough whispers at the party to fill a chapter. They look so proud, Martine, she said, switching to her native Spanish the way she did when she wanted the truth to sting less. He told everyone you'd given the money as a gift of legacy. I laughed softly. Legacy, huh? Well, he wasn't wrong. It's a legacy lesson. She tilted her head. You're going to do something, aren't you? I nodded. Already did. Now I just need to let it play out. Monday morning, Ethan showed up at my door, all charm scrubbed off his face. No suit, no swagger. Just panic. Martin, we've got vendors threatening lawsuits. You need to call your lawyer and fix this. I already did, I said, motioning to the porch chair. Want to sit? He didn't. You're making a mistake. You'll ruin Clara's reputation, our business reputation. Ethan, I said calmly, I spent 40 years balancing ledgers. You can't call a man like me foolish after stealing from his own account, he pointed a finger. I didn't steal. I interrupted. You used trust funds for personal vanity. You reclassified expenses to avoid scrutiny. I call that theft by another name, he swallowed. You're bluffing, I smiled, tired but certain. Then let's find out. He stormed off, slamming the gate hard enough to shake the hinges. That night, Daniel emailed me a single-page summary. Notice of fund misuse filed. All documentation sealed until court review. The heading made me pause. Preliminary audit inquiry. It was clean, neutral, and entirely legal. I closed my laptop. leaned back and let the weight settle. Revenge didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet, like turning off a light in an empty room. Still, somewhere deep down, I knew the real confrontation hadn't happened yet. The birthday party was just the first act. The true reveal, the one that would strip Ethan of his pride and Clara of her illusions, was still waiting for its audience, and I was done being silent in the back row. By Thursday, the ripples from that frozen account had turned into waves. Ethan had gone from demanding to desperate. The venue filed a public claim for unpaid invoices. The florist sent a polite but sharp email about unexpected payment. Failure? And the catering company posted a notice on social media thanking Mr. Martin. Hail for his generous sponsorship. That last one spread fast. When Daniel forwarded me a screenshot, I knew it was time. I called him that afternoon. "Are the final documents ready?" I asked. He sighed. "Ready and waiting. But if you're planning what I think you are—" "I'm not planning," I said quietly. "I'm concluding. We agreed on a delivery time. Saturday evening. Same estate. During a smaller dinner, they were hosting to clear things up with close friends. Ethan had apparently convinced Clara. It was just a misunderstanding. The irony almost made me laugh. Saturday arrived warm and windless. Austin dusk has a way of holding its breath before dark, as if the city itself knows something's coming. I dressed simply. Navy blazer, pressed white shirt, the watch Anna gave me when our firm hit its first million in revenue. I hadn't worn it since her funeral. Before leaving, I slipped the manila folder into my jacket. Mortgage papers, trust clauses, and a neatly printed letter on Hale and Price letterhead, declaration of ownership, and fund misuse. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, I could already hear the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation. Laughter floated across the courtyard lights. Through the tall glass doors, I saw Clara moving between guests, trying to look calm but failing. Ethan was by the bar, checking his phone like a man waiting for bad news to arrive in writing. I didn't wait to be invited in. The room went a little quiet as I stepped through the door. Not silent, just the soft, confused pause people make when the unexpected walks in wearing a calm face. "Dad," Clara said, half smiling. "You came. Would have been rude to miss the dinner," I said. "After all, I paid for the last one." A few guests chuckled nervously. Ethan stiffened. "This isn't the time, Martin." "Time's exactly what it is," I said, pulling the folded letter from my pocket. "I figured since everyone here seems to love announcements, we'd have one more." Daniel entered behind me right on cue, briefcase in hand. He nodded once, then handed me the envelope I'd asked him to deliver personally. I opened it slowly. The sound of paper tearing echoed louder than any shout. "This," I said, raising the first sheet, "is confirmation from Hale and Price Legal that the trust funding this home and your business has been suspended pending investigation of misuse. All payments for the event you held last weekend have been legally recorded as withdrawals under false classification." Someone near the table whispered, "Oh my God." Ethan's face drained. "You can't—" "I already did," I said, "and because the mortgage is still in my name, the house itself reverts to me until the matter's resolved." Clara's hand flew to her mouth. "Dad, please, not here." I turned to her, softer now. "Sweetheart, you told me not to come to your birthday because you wanted something modern. This," I gestured around the room, "is modern, public, transparent. You taught me that when you excluded me from my own contribution." Ethan tried to step forward. "You're humiliating her." I met his stare. "No, I'm teaching her what it costs to erase people who build your foundation." Daniel placed a thin file on the table. "All transactions, all statements, signed and sealed." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the chandelier. I took a breath. "The trust isn't gone, Clara. It's just paused until honesty returns to this family." Then I handed her the same small silver-wrapped box I'd left on her porch the week before. She opened it slowly. Inside was the gold locket Anna wore every Sunday, and my note, "Truth, not things." Tears slid down her cheeks. Ethan turned away, pretending to fix his cufflink, but his jaw was tight. He knew what came next. Banks calling, contracts voided, a reputation dissolving one digit at a time. I slipped my hands into my pockets. "You built this party to impress people. I built it to remind you who you are. The difference is, mine's paid for." Then I nodded to Daniel, and together we walked out into the quiet Texas night. Behind me, through the glass doors, the music stopped. The drive home that night felt longer than it was. Austin's streets were half asleep, traffic lights blinking on empty intersections, the world unaware that an entire family had just quietly shifted on its axis. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, like a man who had finally balanced the final line of a ledger that had been wrong for years. When I got home, I poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and listened to the cicadas. The silence after exposure has its own rhythm. It's not peace exactly, but it's clarity. By morning, the phone started again. Clara first. 3 missed calls. Then a text. "Please, Dad, can we talk?" I let it sit unanswered. She needed a day to understand what had happened, not from anger, but from consequence. At 10 a.m., Daniel called. "It's done," he said. "Ethan called the bank this morning demanding reinstatement. They referred him to me. I told him all inquiries must go through you." "How'd he take it?" I asked. "Like a man who just realized charm doesn't count as collateral." I smiled faintly. "And Clara?" She sounded lost, not angry, just realizing how far it went. I thanked him and ended the call. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw Clara standing there. No makeup, hair tied back, wearing an oversized sweater like she used to in college. She looked small again, human. When I opened the door, she hesitated. "Can I come in?" "Of course," I said, stepping aside. She sat at the kitchen table where so many arguments and birthdays had started. "You embarrassed us," she said softly. "I corrected you," I replied. "There's a difference." She bit her lip, staring at her hands. "Ethan said you planned it, that you wanted to humiliate him. I wanted to stop him," I said, "and I wanted you to see the truth. You told me not to come because I'd make things old-fashioned. But the only thing old-fashioned about me is loyalty." Tears welled in her eyes. "You could have just told me." "I did. For years. Every transfer, every bill, every warning about his spending. You just didn't listen." She looked at the floor. "I didn't know he'd use the business account. I thought everything was legitimate." "Do you?" I asked gently. "Or did you just not want to ask questions because you liked the answers?" Her shoulders slumped. She didn't reply. We sat in silence for a while. Then she whispered, "He's leaving. Said he can't handle the embarrassment." "That's not embarrassment," I said. "That's exposure. He built his life on borrowed image, Clara. I just turned the light on." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "Mom would have hated this." "Your mother hated deceit," I said. "That's why she built safeguards into the trust. She wanted you to have security, not spectacle." Clara reached across the table, resting her hand on mine for the first time in years. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "you rebuild. But this time on your own terms, not his, not mine." She took a deep breath, stood up, and left quietly. The door closed softly behind her. No slam, no drama, just the sound of a daughter leaving with a new kind of understanding. For a few weeks, things were quiet. The newspapers picked up a small piece about a local event planning dispute. But it faded quickly. Ethan's company started losing contracts. Clients didn't trust men who dipped into family funds to pay for parties. Clara moved out of their house, staying with a friend while sorting her affairs. Daniel called again near the end of April. "Audit concluded," misuse confirmed. "We can reinstate the trust under single management. Yours." I paused. "No, give Clara joint oversight. She needs to learn responsibility, not dependency." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Anna would be proud of you, Martin." That evening I drove to Barton Hills one last time. The house looked smaller without the lights, stripped of its borrowed shine. A for sale sign stood in the yard, the paint still wet. I parked across the street and watched as Clara loaded boxes into a friend's car. She didn't see me. I didn't need her to. When I got home, I took the locket box from my drawer and opened it again. Inside, beside Anna's photo, was Clara's handwritten note from her 20s. "Thanks for believing in me, even when I didn't earn it." I smiled and set it back. Some debts, I realized, don't need collection. They just need acknowledgement. A week later, I got a letter from Ethan's lawyer. Formal, defensive. and laced with empty threats about defamation. Daniel replied on my behalf with 2 sentences. All statements made were factual. Further contact will constitute harassment. We never heard from him again. That Sunday, I walked along Lady Bird Lake as the sun dipped behind the skyline. The air smelled of honeysuckle and wet stone. I thought about how strange justice can be, quiet, patient, sometimes mistaken for cruelty. But it's not cruelty to stop someone from drowning in their own deception. It's mercy with paperwork. When I got home, I poured myself a small scotch and looked out the window at Anna's oak tree, the same one that had watched every stage of this story. Its branches swayed in the wind, steady and unbothered. "Balance restored," I whispered. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The first week of May arrived with sunlight sharp enough to bleach the streets. Austin felt cleaner somehow, like the air itself had let go of something heavy. For the first time in months, my mornings felt normal. Coffee, the hum of the refrigerator, a quiet house that no longer judged me for what I'd allowed. Justice didn't come as drama. It came as paperwork. Daniel filed the final documents. The trust officially reinstated under joint oversight between me and Clara. Ethan's access permanently revoked. The mortgage on the Barton Hills house was transferred back to me. Clara signed her acknowledgement of the misuse, her initials small and shaky beside the bold print of her full name. We met at the courthouse steps on a bright Tuesday. She looked worn but lighter, as if shedding the life she'd been pretending to hold. Daniel handed her a copy of the agreement. She read each line slowly. "I don't deserve this," she said quietly. "You don't," I replied, not unkindly. "But you can earn it back." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. "Ethan said I'd ruined everything. Maybe he's right." "You didn't ruin it," I said. "You just let someone else steer. Now you get to take the wheel again." She smiled weakly. "Do you think Mom would forgive me?" "Your mother believed in second chances," I said. "Just not third." We both laughed softly at that, our first shared laugh in months. A few days later, Daniel called with one final update. Ethan filed for bankruptcy. The investors withdrew after the trust audit became public record. I didn't say much, just a quiet, "Good." Justice isn't about gloating. It's about restoring order, and order had finally returned. That evening I took a drive through Barton Hills, past the now empty house. The windows were dark, the lawn overgrown, the place already losing its charm without the illusion of wealth to hold it up. It wasn't my victory. It was simply gravity doing its work. Back home, I opened Anna's old journal. Between recipes and grocery notes, she'd once written a line I'd forgotten. "You can't protect people from the weight of their own choices, but you can make sure the scale still works." That's what this had been. Not punishment. Calibration. Later that night, Clara called again. Her voice was steadier this time. "Dad, I started looking at apartments downtown. Small but close to work, I think. I think I'm ready to stand on my own." "That's all I ever wanted," I said. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I almost did," I admitted, "but your mother's handwriting wouldn't let me." We said goodnight. After the call ended, I poured a glass of scotch and stepped outside under the oak tree. The bark felt rough and alive under my palm. I looked up at the branches swaying against the starlit sky. Justice didn't look like victory. It looked like stillness, like the world finally exhaling after too many held breaths. And for the first time in years, I realized revenge wasn't about teaching them a lesson. It was about remembering my own worth. By June, the city had settled back into its ordinary rhythm. Construction noise in the mornings, the smell of barbecue rolling in from the east side, the faint buzz of life moving on. But something in me had shifted, not broken, just rearranged. When people talk about revenge, they picture fire and fury. But the truth is, real revenge feels like silence after a storm. The noise fades, and all that's left is the sound of your own heartbeat telling you it's finally over. I spent my mornings walking the lake trail again, the same one I'd wandered on the day Clara disinvited me. The benches were the same, the skyline unchanged, but I noticed details I'd missed before. The shimmer of sunlight on the water, the way the breeze carried the scent of oak and dust. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in through the cracks left by anger. One morning, I saw a young man helping his father into a car. They laughed about something small, the kind of moment you forget to appreciate until it's gone. For a second, I felt a sting of envy. Then I smiled, because I'd had that once too. And maybe, in time, I'd have it again with Clara. Back home, I opened my desk drawer, the one filled with old ledgers and photos, and found the silver-wrapped gift box I'd once placed at her doorstep. I'd kept the second one I made afterward, never delivered. Inside was a letter I'd written to her that week, but never sent. Clara, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without letting it burn you. Your mother believed that truth always finds its way home. I hope one day you do too. I folded the letter back into the box. Some messages, I decided, don't need delivery, they just need to exist. That afternoon, Mrs. Delgado stopped by with her usual basket of muffins. She'd been keeping tabs on everything, as neighbors do. Your daughter called me last week, she said, settling into the porch chair. She asked about your health. I smiled. She's learning to ask questions again. She's learning to listen, she said. Took a long road to get there. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling. After she left, I brewed another cup of coffee and sat by the window where Anna's photograph hung. She was smiling in that easy way she always had, the smile that told me she'd already figured out life's math long before I did. Balance restored, I whispered again. But this time, it didn't sound like a statement. It sounded like a prayer. A week later, Clara sent a message, short, unpolished, but full of something I hadn't heard from her in years. Humility. Dad, I got the apartment. It's small, but mine. Maybe next weekend we could have dinner. Just us? I read it twice, then typed my reply. I'll bring dessert. That night, under the oak tree, I thought about everything that had unfolded. The exclusion, the betrayal, the exposure, the quiet rebuilding. Revenge hadn't erased the pain, but it had restored the truth. And that truth was simple. Dignity isn't given by others. It's reclaimed when you stop asking for it. Before heading back inside, I looked up through the branches where the stars cut through like scattered coins. Anna used to say, "You don't lose family. Martin, you just learn who they really are." She was right. And as the wind moved gently through the leaves, I whispered the only thing left to say, I didn't lose them. Anna, they just finally found me. By late summer, the heat over Austin had turned thick and unrelenting. I'd started watering the lawn before sunrise, just to hear the soft hiss of sprinklers cutting through the stillness. The house felt lighter now, less like a museum of old memories and more like a space I actually lived in. Clara called every few days. Not long conversations, but real ones, about her new apartment downtown, the office where she'd just started a job in property management, how she was learning to budget for the first time. There was pride in her voice now, not performance. It was the sound of someone who'd stopped living on borrowed comfort. One Friday evening, she came by with takeout boxes and a bottle of mid-priced wine. I owe you a proper dinner, she said. We ate in the same kitchen where everything had broken months earlier. Between bites, she told me she'd been volunteering at a community shelter on weekends. It's not glamorous, she said, but it feels good to do something that isn't about being seen. I smiled. Your mother would have loved that, her eyes softened. I think I'm starting to understand her. After dinner, she reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a check, modest but real. First repayment, she said quietly, for the trust. I looked at her handwriting on the signature line, steady and determined. Keep it, I said. Use it to grow something of your own. No, she replied. This time, I want to earn the ground I stand on. We didn't speak for a long time after that. We didn't have to. Sometimes the silence between two people isn't distance. It's healing. A week later, Daniel invited me for coffee downtown. Everything's settled, he said, sliding a folder across the table. The trust is stable, your accounts are separate, and Clara's listed as secondary trustee. Clean break, I nodded. And Ethan? He gave a small shrug. He's out of state. Started over, or trying to. The investors won't touch him. Word gets around fast when pride's the only collateral. I didn't gloat. There's no satisfaction in watching someone collapse under their own arrogance. There's only understanding. Understanding that some lessons can't be taught gently. That evening, I stopped by Lady Bird Lake again. The air was warm, cicadas humming in the trees. The same bench where I'd once sat feeling invisible now felt like an old friend. I watched the sun dip below the skyline and thought about how easily love can turn into silence when pride takes the microphone. I took out my phone and scrolled through old photos: Clara's 5th birthday, her first bicycle, her graduation, the wedding where Anna had whispered, "She's yours now, Martin. Let her go when you have to." I finally understood what she meant. Letting go isn't surrender. It's respect for distance earned. As twilight deepened, a group of college kids laughed nearby, their voices echoing across the water. I thought about how time keeps moving, unbothered by our little dramas. Maybe that's what justice really is, a quiet forward motion after all the noise. When I got home, I opened the window beside my desk. The night air carried the smell of cut grass and rain. On the sill sat Anna's old framed photo, the one I'd kept since our wedding day. I touched the glass lightly. "I kept my promise," I whispered. "She's secure now." Outside, the oak tree rustled as if it had heard. The next morning, I woke with no calls to return, no documents to sign, no debts to settle. Just sunlight spilling across the floor and the sound of birds starting their day. Revenge had ended. Justice had done its work. What remained was life. Quiet, honest, and mine again. A year passed almost to the day. March again. Same soft light spilling through the kitchen window. Same quiet rhythm to the mornings. But everything else had changed. Clara had settled into her new apartment and a new version of herself. She still called every Sunday, sometimes to talk about work, sometimes just to ask what I was cooking. We'd found a new balance, one built not on money or guilt, but on conversation. That morning, as I sat on the porch sipping coffee, the mail truck rolled up. The driver waved. "Morning, Mr. Hale. Got something from out of state for you." I tore open the envelope. Inside was a business proposal, a glossy, overconfident letterhead stamped E. Price Financial Holdings. The signature at the bottom made me laugh. Ethan? He'd applied for a business loan through one of the regional banks I quietly advised for after retirement. My role wasn't large, but I reviewed final approvals on high-risk clients. His letter was full of the same polished arrogance that once filled my living room. Expansion potential. Guaranteed ROI, personal legacy funding. Attached was his application package, incomplete, missing collateral, with income statements that read more like fiction than finance. And there, in small print, the final irony. He'd listed the Hale Family Trust as his former investor. I leaned back in my chair and let out a quiet breath of disbelief. The man who told me I didn't belong at my own daughter's birthday was now asking for my signature again. Time to approve his next illusion. I took my time with the response. The bank required only a single line on the form, recommendation: approve, decline. I ticked decline and wrote one note beneath it. Applicant history indicates pattern of misrepresentation. Not recommended for funding. Then I signed it. M. Hale, simple, lawful, complete. Justice, 1 year later, had circled back not as vengeance, but as symmetry. I placed the letter aside and poured another cup of coffee. The world outside my window moved on, joggers passing by, neighbors watering lawns, life unbothered by small reckonings. Around noon, Clara called. "Hey, Dad, I got a promotion," she said, voice bright with the kind of pride that comes from earning something yourself. I smiled. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. They said my work ethic reminded them of someone." "Oh?" I asked. "Yeah," she laughed softly. "Of you." For a long moment I couldn't find words. The house around me seemed to breathe. Anna's photo caught a glint of light on the wall. Everything felt full. "Dad?" she said. "I'm here," I said, steady. "Just proud of you." We talked about dinner plans, her treat this time. After we hung up, I stepped outside, folder still open on the table, Ethan's declined loan sitting on top. The spring breeze carried the smell of cedar and new grass. I thought about all the lessons that had unfolded over that year. How love without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and how silence can sometimes be the loudest justice of all. People think revenge is an explosion. It isn't. It's arithmetic. Every action, every slight, every betrayal. They all add up. And if you're patient enough, The numbers always tell the truth. Before going back inside, I looked once more at the oak tree swaying gently in the yard. The one Anna planted, the one that had stood through every season, through every version of us. "You didn't lose me," I said quietly into the wind. "You gave me away." The breeze rustled the leaves like a whisper of agreement, and for the first time in years I smiled, not as a father wronged, but as a man finally free.